So moving on to the shoot system, the shoot system also has many anatomical features. So it has the stems, which are the vertical above ground structures, and those consist of the nodes where the leaves attach and the internodes. That's just the space between the nodes. And you have the leaf, which is the photosynthetic organ, okay? And um, those are attached by a stalk called the petiole. The other structures are the axillary buds, and these form nodes just above the leaf attachment. Those axillary buds could grow into a branch if it has enough nutrients. Then you have the tip of the stem and the branch that contains the apical bud. So the apical bud could also develop into flowers if it has the right resources. So here you can see the diagram. So this whole piece is the stem. Then you have the leaves that are attached to the stem by the little stalk called the petiole. Right above the leaf and stem attachment, you have the axillary buds. Those could grow into branches, okay, if the plant has enough resources. And then at the very top, or sorry, in between the nodes, which is where the leaves attach, you have the internodes. So these segments here are the internodes. And at the very top, you have the apical bud. So at the tip of the apical bud or the axillary bud, you can have a flower produced. So there's also diversity in the shoot systems, just like there was in the root systems. And similarly, it can also be analyzed on three levels. So we have the morphological diversity that exists among the species. There's a phenotypic plasticity within individuals. So remember, phenotypic plasticity is are the changes that a plant can make in response to changes in the environment. Then there's the modified shoots. So these are uh, modified shoots with specialized functions. So the shoot systems, they can range in size from a tiny duckweed that's less than 5 millimeters in diameter to a giant redwood, which is around 100 meters tall. So the variation in size and shape of the shoot system of various species of plants minimizes the competition for light. For example, silver sword plants that are native to Hawaii have shoot systems that are very diverse. In lush environments where the competition for light favors taller shoot systems, you have taller plants, but in dry, windblown habitats, those favor shorter stems. So you have plants that are lower to the ground. Okay. The size and shape of the plant shoot system can also vary based on the variation of growing conditions. So things like temperature, the availability of water, nutrients, and light, and also genetically identical herbaceous plants, if grown in different environments, can have a lot of variation. So this was one of the experiments that they tried by taking cuttings of identical herbaceous plants and then and growing them at different elevations. So they took the cuttings from individuals of Portentilla grandulosa growing at low, medium, and high elevation habitats in the Sierra Nevada mountains. They took the cuttings and then they propagated the plants. So these were uh, genetically identical to the sources. Okay. Then they transplanted the individuals from each source population into the different habitats. So the low, the medium, and the high. Okay. And what they found was that there was a lot of variation, even when you have genetically identical populations. If you put them at different elevations, you got different plants, well, different shapes of the plant. Okay. So what they found was that the environment did play a great influence on the body size and shape of genetically identical plants. Okay. But the genetic makeup also has a large influence on the plant morphology. So these are plants from different source populations that look different even when they were grown in the same habitat. So stems of many plants served in specialized functions. For example, the cactus stems are modified for storing water and for photosynthesis. The stolons are modified stems that grow horizontally and they produce adventitious roots and leaves at each node. You have rhizomes that grow horizontally and function in asexual reproduction. You have tubers that grow underground and they're pretty much swollen rhizomes that function in storing things like carbohydrates or starch. And then you also have the thorns, which are modified stems that serve for protection. So here's a cactus. This is a longitudinal section of a cactus. So it's cut from the side. Okay, so you can see that this is where the space where it stores the water. You have the stolons, and here this is a strawberry stolon or stolons that produce individuals at the nodes. You have the tubers, such as the potatoes, that store carbohydrates like starch, and then thorns. You guys should be familiar with those, like the ones that you see on roses that protect the plant from herbivores. And then the rhizomes, which are used for uh, to produce new individuals in asexual reproduction. Sometimes it can be confused for two separate plants sprouting, but yeah, they would be if you dig them out, they're connected at underground and go through the rhizome. So moving on to the leaves, the vast majority of photosynthesis occurs in the leaves because they have a large surface area to volume ratio, and that makes them more efficient at absorbing uh, light photons and supporting photosynthesis. So there are different types of leaves. Well, starting with the simple leaf, this has two main structures, the blade and the petiole. Okay, here's the blade. This is the petiole, the little stalk. Compound leaf, a compound leaf has a blade that's divided into leaflets. So this whole portion is still considered the blade. And then you still have the petiole. For a doubly compound leaf, that's a large, that's a leaf that is large and it's divided even further. So all of these leaflets are still part of the blade. And then you have needle-like leaves that are characteristic of of plants that grow in very cold or very hot environments. because they are able to reduce water loss. So with compound leaves, the blade is divided into a series of leaflets. Okay. But there are some examples of leaves where not all the leaves are large with or thin with a large surface area. So like the pine example, because like again, these are adapted for areas that have very little water. So either deserts or cold environments, because in those environments the water is frozen, so it's not available to the plants. And so there's two observations that support this hypothesis. So water is scarce in deserts and frozen in cold habitats. Therefore, leaves with large surface area lose large amounts of water through transpiration. Another thing you can see is the arrangement of leaves on the stem may vary. So they can either alternate from one side of the stem, from either side of the stem. They can be paired on opposite side of the stem. They can be arranged in a whorl, or they can form a compact arrangement where the internodes are short. So this gives it a more of a rosette pattern. So these are the alternate leaves. Yeah. These are the opposite leaves, the whorl leaves, and then the rosette. The rosette is similar to the whorl leaves. It's just like I said, the internodes are shorter in the rosette. So although leaves do not grow continuously, they do exhibit phenotypic plasticity. For instance, an oak tree has leaves, and depending on the amount of sunlight that they're exposed to, they will have different leaves. So sun leaves will have relatively a small surface area. So this allows it to reduce water loss through transpiration. But the shaded leaves have a large and broad surface, and these are to maximize the photon absorption. So these are the oak tree leaves, the ones that are grown in the shade, and then the ones that are grown in the sun. You can also see this when you plant something, let's say for like a tomato, you plant one before spring and it's able to get, and it grows during a warm environment or warm weather, you'll get a tomato plant with smaller leaves compared to a tomato plant that's grown during the late fall or even winter, where it gets less sunlight and you'll get bigger leaves. Okay, so here are some examples of modified leaves. So we have things like onion bulbs, which are used to store nutrients. Okay, we have the succulent leaves, like from aloe vera, that's used to store water. You have the floral mimics, like from the red Paccentia, that's used to attract pollinators. You have the traps, like from the pitcher plant, that's used to trap insects. And then you have the tendrils, like the pea tendrils that help it um, attach itself to substrates. And then finally, you have the cactus spines. So obviously, these are for to protect the stem. Okay. Okay, so this is a good place to stop. So we'll continue on the next video.